Welcome to Shaq's house. Shaq's house. That's our Shaq. You're now in Shaq's house. Welcome to Shaq's house.
What's going on, folks? It's your boy Shaq House here. Hope your week has been going well. Check this out. Of the original X-Men, I've covered 3 out of 5. Today we're going to cover number 4. Hank McCoy, the Beast. Yeah, I know. A lot of you have hated that character ever since Brian Michael Bendis frankly fucked him up, but bringing back the original X-Men and acting on his own accord during Krakoa, he's had a lot of character assassination, I think. But Hank McCoy, he deserves his flowers. He's one of the smartest people in the Marvel Universe. And FYI, and I'm going to get into this in the video, his genius level intellect, that's not part of his power set at all. Nah, we're going to get into that. We're going to get into his history, his relationships, his contributions, etc. So, Beastie Boy Hank McCoy. Enjoy. I made a rhyme. The Beast. The Beast's mutant powers are a complementary set of enhancements to his physical prowess. Born with abnormally large hands and feet and exceptional physical prowess, he originally possessed superhuman strength at roughly the Class 2 level, agility, reflexes, dexterity, and natural acrobatic skills. He is omnidextrous, capable of writing legibly with either hand or either foot. He can run up to 60 miles per hour, has enhanced agility and dexterity that allow his oversized hands and feet to grip almost anything. His agility exceeds that of an Olympic-trained acrobat, allowing him to perform a complicated series of acrobatic stunts and gives him great leaping ability. His abnormally large hands and feet allow him to walk on a slack rope with ease, write with his toes and both hands simultaneously, walk on his hands for hours, and even walk up walls by wedging his toes and fingers between the smallest of cracks in the wall and forming a vice-like grip on them. Upon taking a job with the Brand Corporation, Hank created a mutagenic serum which isolated the X factor from mutant DNA. Needing a disguise, Hank theorized that ingesting the serum would heighten his bestial traits enough to hide his identity, and that he could return to normal by ingesting an anti-mutagen serum to reverse the effects within the hour. However, he missed the deadline and activated his own latent mutations in the process. He now possessed a significantly altered physiology. His body was covered with thick, spiky gray fur, and he had pointed canine teeth and ears, claws on his fingers and toes, a sloping posture, and his arms were slightly longer than a normal man's. His agility and strength were increased, and his senses were to a small degree as well, and he also developed a powerful healing factor that enabled him to survive an accurate hail of gunfire. He also began producing a mildly intoxicating pheromone at all times, not enough to actually manipulate women against their will, but something of a mild aphrodisiac. His fur color eventually changed from gray to an intense blue-black. Years later, an old colleague from the Brand Corporation attempted to devise an anti-mutant serum to remove his own son's mutant powers and experimented with it on Hank. It was only partially successful. For the Beast, he retained all of his superhuman physical powers, but only lost his fur, fangs, and claws. He still retained his altered posture. His hair was now spiky gray-black instead of straight brown, and his facial features were not entirely back to what they were before the original serum. But this retro mutagen was still an unstable element in his system when McCoy was exposed to the viral touch of the horseman known as pestilence. Though his healing powers saved his life, his metabolism now adopted an unhealthy new wrinkle. Whenever he exerted his strength, Beast would become physically stronger than he had ever been before, but his intelligence would deplete at the same time. So over a period of weeks, Hank became extraordinarily powerful physically, but his mind was reduced to that of a mentally challenged child. Things went completely out of control when Infectia, a mutant with the power to manipulate matter on a molecular level, kissed Hank. The various factors in his body went to war, and for a period of days, Beast constantly fluctuated between various physical appearances and level of health. Ultimately, he regained his blue-furred appearance, his intelligence, and stabilized at an enormous level of strength, around class 25. Later, Hank's body underwent a secondary mutation after he was seriously wounded in battle with the villain Vargas, and his fellow X-Man Sage had to jumpstart his healing powers to save his life. Growing in stature and developing a few hundred additional pounds of mass, Beast was now cat-like instead of ape-like in appearance. His strength and agility were now of a greater magnitude, his claws and fangs were now more pronounced, and his senses and healing powers were increased. He also now possessed predatory instincts and 3 fingers and an opposable thumb on each hand. An encounter with his younger self, however, helped to stabilize his mutation, giving him an ape-like appearance once more. On a further note, it appears that the Beast mutation seems to involve atavistic de-evolution. His original mutant abilities placed him on par with the Neanderthal ancestors of modern man. Then his first mutagenic enhancement dropped him further back on the evolutionary scale to the time of the simians. His secondary mutation places him before the ape's time, when the great cats like the saber-toothed tigers were the strongest of species. Okay, here are some fun facts about the Beast. Hank McCoy was born to Edna and Norton McCoy in the small rural town of Dunphy, Illinois, which is just as real as the Illinois suburb that's used in John Hughes movies.
There is no Shermer in Illinois. Movies are fucking bullshit.
His dad's exposure to nuclear radiation at the power plant where he worked at may have been the cause of Hank's mutation, and from the moment of his birth, his large hands and feet made it obvious that he was a mutant. As he grew up, he showed remarkable physical ability, which was only equaled by his bright intelligence and curiosity. One of the original X-Men, he was the 4th member to join and the oldest of the bunch. When he left, he earned his doctorates and then tried his hand out in the corporate world, only to later join the Avengers, where he became pals for life with Wonder Man, the Defenders. He was a founding member of X-Factor and later a mainstay of the X-Men. And like his fellow X-Man Archangel, he's one of the first mutants to publicly reveal his civilian identity. He's had relationships, notably with human women, particularly Vera Cantor and Trish Tilby, the latter being a news reporter who sold out the X-Men and mutants altogether by making the legacy virus public information. But Hank and Trish, they later made up, got back together, and then she dumped him when his secondary mutation kicked in, concerned about how it would affect her image. Yeah, this bitch dumped him over the phone when they were about to head out on a date. And that same night, he was physically beaten and telepathically shitted on by Cassandra Nova. All these events made him insecure about being a mutant and how he devolved further down the evolutionary line. He even considered getting a cure for his X gene until Wolverine talked him out of it. He's at his best with writers like Scott Lobdell, Grant Morrison, and Joss Whedon, who bring out his human side. And also, contrary to popular opinion, Hank's intellect is not a product of his power set. He's just naturally smart like Reed Richards, Tony Stark, or Hank Pym. In fact, Henry McCoy is of genius-level intelligence and holds a medical doctorate and a PhD in biochemistry. He's a globally recognized biochemist and an expert on mutations and evolutionary biology. Dr. McCoy has extensive knowledge of genetics, biochemistry, technology, and other scientific fields. He's also a polyglot, as he is fluent in German, Latin, Spanish, Parsi, Japanese, and Russian. Dr. McCoy is also well-versed in literature, history, philosophy, arts, music, and is an accomplished keyboard musician. Also, oh my stars and garters, we all know that's his trademark phrase. Hank also has mystical knowledge and connection to the orb of Zar-Jul, which allowed him to harness supernatural forces for feats such as divination, teleportation, and time travel, while occasionally causing him to morph into a demonic bestial form when accessing his abilities. Also, it's worth noting his variant, his alternate reality counterpart, the Dark Beast from Earth 295, that is, the Age of Apocalypse, he was an evil, sadistic motherfucker who knowingly experimented on himself to accelerate his own mutations, and he's been a thorn in Hank's side ever since they met in this reality. And 2 mutants who are similar to Hank are Primal from Generation Hope, who has the same physical powers as Hank, but he's governed more by animal behavior patterns, and Mannequin from Alpha Flight, who splits himself into evolutionary counterparts of himself. Now Beast, his very mutation makes him a throwback. Also, despite being a recognized biochemist and a former Avenger who had a cheerful, fun-loving nature, Hank McCoy, unfortunately, is still a mutant in the eyes of most. He's got a brilliant mind, but a bestial body, the irony. And that lack of true acceptance, getting dumped by Trish Tilby, the insecurities implanted in him by Cassandra Nova, is what I think finally made him become more proactive and pro-mutant in the past decade. From bringing the original X-Men to the present day to avert a crisis, yeah, thank you Brian Michael Bendis for fucking up X-Men, to him renouncing his human name and going rogue on Krakoa, fans grew to hate Hank McCoy from the start of this period. People think he became more like the Dark Beast, but I say what we finally got to see right here is the real Hank McCoy. I mean, look at him. Alright folks, that's my take on the Beast. Hank McCoy, he's done much for mutant kind, Avengers, humans, mutants. He cured the legacy virus for God's sakes, and he still doesn't get his flowers. Give it to him, folks. But that's what I got for you this week. Tune in next week, I'll be doing a comparison between 3 obscure mutants. That's right, you're going to be shocked at how obscure they are and remind yourself, God, how could I forget about them? I'll see you next week, folks. Later.
Mansion, apartment.
Shack, house. Yes!